Namaste everyone. I want to hear a big round of applause for all the speakers that have spoken so far. Thank you. Because one of the key points of my entire speech is going to be about participation. It has to be a two-way street for any opportunity, any conversation to be successful. And it's very important that we speak about everything that's happening as far as our democracy is concerned. I'm Ashish Pareek. I'm one of India's youngest primetime anchors, and I like to call myself a retired engineer. I say that because I was once an engineer. I had big dreams. I knew I wanted to be an engineer because my parents told me, well, engineers earn well, they're well settled. So that is what I went for. I was a good student in school. Eventually, when I was the first person to get placed in my college, I went there one day, sat in a cubicle. The salary was good. It was a dream job. It was a fancy office. But then I realized this is not my life. This is not how my story will unfold. I realized there's much more to my life than just earning money. And that is when the spectrum of possibilities of my life opened up. And I really want to talk more about me, but there's a bigger cause for which I'm here. And like they say in a democracy, participation from both sides is equal. I shouldn't be the only one speaking. So I'll ask you a couple of questions and I want your opinion on it, and we'll take the conversation forward. How many of you today watch news on television? I want you to raise your hands. I hardly see a couple of hands there. So it's about 95% of the people here do not watch news on television anymore. That's massive. A quick follow-up question. Those who do not watch news on television, why do you not watch it? Do you think the credibility of news channels has gone down? If you agree, raise your hands. That's a majority there. So clearly a lot of you think that media, particularly TV industry, has lost its credibility. I'm not accepting it, neither am I denying it, but I acknowledge it with humble, all humility, and I'm going to give you a different perspective today, which will help you understand why that has happened and how you as viewers are equally responsible for what's happening. And I'm not putting the blame on the viewers. I'm just trying to give you a complete perspective of how the entire ecosystem works and what really is the reason for that. The problem in India is that if I am a news channel, if I run a news channel, my quality, my standard is not measured by the quality of journalism I do. It is not measured by how many good stories I've done, how many investigative stories I've done. It is only measured in terms of TRP. How many of you have heard of TRP here? We've all done. Mostly, we all hear about TRP and we think of, well, it's a serial, it's a drama, it's a reality show. The problem in India today is that even news channels are ranked by TRP. The bigger question is, who decides TRP? An anchor doesn't, a producer doesn't, an editor doesn't, a news channel doesn't. TRP is decided by you, the viewers. So I'm not again blaming the viewers. I'm trying to paint the complete picture. Eventually what happens is that a good newsroom in India is a very expensive operation. Even though we are the fourth pillar, we are supposed to uphold democracy, we are supposed to do everything, everyone has paychecks to clear. Everyone has bills to pay. Everyone has their own obligations. So all of this is not judged by the quality of journalism. No advertiser is going to come to us and say, well, you're doing good journalism, so here's an ad. Nobody does that. They judge us only by TRP. And eventually, it's become a rat race of TRPs between media companies. And that is a vicious cycle that we're not able to get through. I'll tell you my example. I was not very long ago in a previous organization, I was given a show that would have taken me to a superstar status as far as anchors are concerned. The problem is, it did not hit my conscience. It was a great show. It had a great reach. It was on a great network. It had everything, every masala. Unfortunately, that's the word we're using today. It had great masala to be a super duper special. But the problem is, I realized that I wouldn't be doing journalism. By heart, I'm a journalist. I'm not a performer. So I had to let go of the opportunity. And to be honest, integrity, speaking from here, looks heroic. But in reality, it's a very lonely journey. You take a decision by your conscience, you decide that, no, this is not how my story is. Even though I have a spectrum of possibilities, I will choose my own path. But it's a very lonely path. You do stories that matter. You do stories on urban infrastructure. You do stories on environment, on real issues. But the problem is, who's watching? People still, that's the reality of India today. People still choose shouting matches, drama, screaming anchors at each other. That is what people like to watch. And unfortunately, that's become the stereotype with Indian journalism. And that is why people like me who choose to go the unconventional way, who choose to be journalists, not performers, well, we are not superstars, but at least I know for a fact that I can live without being a superstar reporter and an anchor, but I cannot live being a bad journalist. It's not my duty. I still remember how dangerous I realized good journalism was. I uncovered one of the biggest fraud, biggest scandals in Karnataka, financial scandals in Karnataka. You know what my reward was? I didn't get a better pay. I didn't get a better paycheck. My car was vandalized. My car was damaged. I was pushed into a police station. My cameraman flew the spot. That is the reward you get for good journalism in India. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't take that reward, they move aside. But the reality is, 90% of journalists in India still continue to do their job, and they will continue to do it as long as you, as viewers, support them. We speak a lot about choices that we make. How does a democracy work? A democracy works when you vote wisely. Similarly, journalism will also succeed when you watch wisely. Every single channel that you change and watch, it's a choice that you're making. Every single video that you share is a choice that you're making, that yes, I want this content, I enjoy news like this. Let's assume the first section here, there are two sections here. This is channel A, this is channel B. Channel A has decided to run an outrage fest. Two spokespersons of two political parties shouting at each other, screaming at each other, and Channel 2 has decided to run a story on urban infrastructure. There are bad roads, there are flooded roads, so you decide to show that story. The reality in India is this Channel A that runs the shouting matches actually gets more TRP. So tomorrow, and the problem with TRP is that when they get more TRPs, advertisers are going to run to them. Now, help me understand, as channel B, the second channel, will you not be compelled to do that as well? You got salaries to pay, you got rent to pay, you have to hire camera crew, you have to employ the best journalists. So when outrage gets attention, outrage repeats. When shouting matches get more attention, shouting matches repeat. When conspiracy theories and public trial, media trial gets more attention, media trial repeats. The good journalism, unfortunately, doesn't have any bias. So tomorrow, when you tell me that, well, Ashish, a lot of people say, come up to me and tell me, well, the media industry is biased, it's dying. The reality is, it's not. It is only giving the audience and the viewers what they want, because you choose the kind of journalism that happens in India. And in my personal experience, I believe there is a room for good journalism. There is a room for people who are there to speak about real issues, real stories. When was the last time you saw a viral video which spoke about urban issues in India? When was the last time you liked or shared a video about environmental pollution? When was the last time you focused on a real news channel that is actually showing you what's happening in India? I'm sure a lot of you cannot even recall that. The problem is, we, as an Indian society, we enjoy drama. And the problem is, we have started enjoying dramas on our news channels as well. And that, unfortunately, is what you're seeing. So when people tell me that, well, media doesn't listen to us, we listen to you. Whatever we are showing is what you choose. So today, when you go back home, you complain about media, understand that there are journalists who stay away from their families for months. When there's a war in Gaza, there's a war in Russia or Ukraine, there are journalists who are stationed. Every single story that you see is being sent by a journalist who's staying away from his wife, from his parents, from his family for many months, risking his or her life and sending you these stories. So tomorrow, when you say, well, the media industry is dying, media is biased, realize that you are blaming 90% of honest, good journalists in this country only because you see the top 10%. So, as viewers, your responsibility is to make sure that the 90% that are actually honestly doing their jobs are being given their due attention. And one of the most important things that I also need to talk about here, that now that we're talking about spectrum of possibilities, is the fact that anything you wish or you visualize can be done. And I'll give you my example. I've spoken a lot about the industry and what needs to be done. And well, of course, the TED Talk is also about me. I am not a trained journalist. I am not a media professional. I was a good student in school. I took up biology because my parents said, well, it's a good thing to do. I took up biology. Then I realized, well, I don't want to study till I'm 35. I want to ensure that I finish my studies before I'm 30. So I became an engineer. And when I became an engineer, I realized that at best in my life, I am going to be an average engineer. That moment of self reflection is when I thought, well, I think I need to do something else. So when I was doing my engineering, I had classes from 9 to 4. After 4, from 5 to 2 a.m., I used to go out there, shoot for a local channel, work with a local channel. I worked in production, I held cameras, I anchored, I reported. I did everything for 4 years without complaining once because I believed I was doing what I was good at. And that, of course, is the spectrum of possibility that I was looking at. I was willing to be a failed journalist than be an average successful engineer, because at the end of the day, we all have spectrum of possibilities, yet we choose our own path. So tomorrow, you need to realize this, that you may have the best resources at your disposal. You may be good at studies. I see a lot of students here as well. Realize that talent knocks on doors, but then confidence is something that opens those doors. And that exactly is my biggest learning from my life. And that's a message I want to give. And before I wrap, I want you all to realize that this is a participative democracy. You choose your government, you choose the people that you vote for. So tomorrow, when you watch a news channel, when you share a video, realize that you're not just watching or enjoying something, you are choosing and you're participating. So choose to participate in a better ecosystem. And like I said, I am happy being an average reporter, anchor, but I'll be happy as long as I'm a journalist. I cannot compromise on my conscience, and I feel as a nation, we should also ensure that good journalism is appreciated, because there are a lot of people willing to put their lives at risk for every single one of you. Yes, we talk about soldiers, we talk about, Kisan, Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, but the reality is we also put our lives at risk to bring you stories that matter. So tomorrow, the reward that you give us is your attention, and make sure that you appreciate good journalism. That's my time. Thanks so much.